some things are just better with dice. This is our top 5 dice worker placement games.
I'm Paul.
And I'm Devin, and we are the Dads and Dice. And today we are talking about a mechanic that Paul and I found a few years ago, and we just fell into loving. We always like worker placement games, but once we started seeing dice being used, kind of that dice manipulation, the pip values, or just the unique ways that they can be, now we're head in every time we see a game that uses dice as worker placement. We're all in trying to figure out which one is the best. And I think we've made our list for it.
Yeah, so when we were kind of doing our research on this one, trying to figure out what games we were going to pick, it was kind of hard to really settle in on a definition of dice worker placement, right? Devin really thinks about this as kind of your traditional worker placement where you go out and you need to block a space that you can't use it again. Looking on BGG, there's kind of more of like a pip strength, like you're still using them as actions, but you might not necessarily be blocking it. So all the games on here might not be true worker placement games, but they fall kind of in that realm of what we've decided what a dice worker placement game is.
Yeah, so let's get over to our number 5s. Okay, so for my number 5 game, it is going to be Nestlings. Ooh. This is actually a game that I don't think has come out quite yet.
Not yet.
Paul and I actually got to play test this game, and the first time I played it, I instantly was like, this is a great game.
Yes.
Something that, has that cute nature theme, and is what I would say very simple, but had a good amount of strategy that I just really liked. I compared it to not just for the nature theme, but like a Cascadia, and I thought it was better than a Cascadia. You have these different biomes, and you roll your dice secretly, and then you're going to place them out into the biomes. And the worker placement aspect goes because the earlier you're placing it into it, the quicker you are at collecting insects and stuff to its nestlings. So you're like a mama bird trying to feed your little birdlings. And they had this neat little, I'm going to call it sliver mechanic, where the first time you got a certain type of food out of, the biomes, you got these slivers, and if you completed so much,
section,
it gave you bonuses. And it was so neat how it worked, the way you use the food to feed, but then you also had them as a set collection thing, and so balancing, do I feed, get the victory points right away so I don't get any negative penalties, or do I get a little greedy, hold it for the set collection, and try to go that route? And I just really liked the way this game was.
Honestly, I kind of forgot about this one, and you just saying that, it really reminds me, this was a great game. This was really fun. What I really enjoyed was, you'd said like a Cascadia, right? In that it's very simple, but there's some deep strategy that goes into it, right? It really depends, like, oh, am I gonna put this here or am I gonna put it here? And then like you said at the end with the set collection of fulfilling these contracts, I don't remember exactly what they were, but you're fulfilling contracts essentially. So that goes into the, do I get the points now or do I get them at the end? And that, again, we've talked about it before, that kind of goes into our play style. That was a fun game. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so that was my number 5. Paul, what do you got?
So for my number 5 game, that is Creature Comforts. And this was a game that we got to play at BGG Spring a couple years ago. And I really enjoyed this one. So on Creature Comforts, you basically just have this board and you've got a bunch of different actions. And these actions, they are specific pip values of your dice. And then you have some at the top that change throughout the rounds. You go through, your spring, your summer, your fall, all that kind of stuff. You personally have 2 dice of your colors and you're gonna roll them, and then you get whatever value you see. At that point, you're then gonna place your workers out on the board. Now, this is where the cool part about this game comes in, is you're gonna speculate on what dice are gonna come out later, because you've only rolled 2, but then there's a set of community dice also that everybody else gets to use. So there might be a space out there that's like a 5 and a 6 strength that you need, and you may have just rolled a 5, and now you're hoping that in the community dice you get a 6, right? So you'll go into that space, Again, hope for that 6, but if you don't get it, there's ways to mitigate your dice. You get a little band-aid, which on your next turn lets you change the pip value up or down depending on what you need. So it's a really good game of kind of hoping and guessing, and I hope this comes out, and then there's some deep strategy in it as well. It plays really quickly, 45 minutes to an hour, and it's just light enough and quick enough to just be that kind of, not necessarily a filler game, but a good start to the day kind of game.
Yeah, I honestly can't remember too much about it. I think it's like a contract fulfillment. It was, you had like blankets and
yeah, so you have all your
and,
creature comforts,
yeah,
right?
those
You're
kind of
setting
things.
up for the winter upcoming, and you're collecting resources, and then yeah, you trade it for, like you said, quilts and board games and campfires and soups and all that. So it's got a really cute theme, but besides that, it's just a good game.
Yeah, and I remember it having, the part I liked was the left side of the board was like a tree house type of thing. And from what I can remember, that was where you got your kind of rule breakers, engine builder type of cards. So you went after those, and they let you, I don't even remember if it was manipulate dice or what they did. But yeah, I just remember that being a pretty solid game.
All right, so going on to our number 4 now.
So for my number 4, it is going to be Euphoria. Another game that Paul and I played that we just instantly loved. It is a set in a dystopian society where your workers are dice, and you're actually wanting them to be both like high pip value so that they can do something, but community wise you want them to be as dumb as possible. So you have a certain knowledge level that they can get to, that if all your pips add to a certain level, then you actually lose one. So it was just a really fun mechanic. Every time you rolled your dice, you're kind of hoping for something strong, and then all of the actions, because it's like I guess kind of a socialist dystopia, it doesn't matter whose workers are there on the community spaces, they all add up, and so the actions get stronger the more pip value it is, but there's actually like kind of a sweet spot you want them, because you don't want them too smart. And then yeah, you had your normal spots that only one person could go to, and it just had a really neat mechanic of, you're trying to build things together, but if you're not the one that actually contributes to building the thing, you actually get a penalty for it. And so
shunned for it.
yeah, and so then it just, and the penalties are pretty harsh. So it's like, oh, you and so are building this one, but so and whoever else are building this one, and oh, I get this one and they get that penalty, but I'm actually taking the penalty over here, and just the way it all works together, I just think is so well done.
One thing that I really enjoyed about this game, and something that you even commented on, was just the actual theme of it, right? Like just the entire thing. Some of the resources are bliss, right? So you're trying to make your workers ignorantly bliss, because again, you don't want them to be too smart. And then at one point throughout the game, you also come up with these dilemma, like this choices, right? So it's like, do you escape and fulfill this kind of like your dream and gain some resources here, or do you kind of stay in your own world and continue what you're doing? So you've got this kind of choice, and again, that just really leans deep into that theme of the game, which honestly just works perfectly. I think this might be my favorite Stonemaier game.
Yeah, it's a solid one. So Paul, what is your number 4?
So for my number 4, I've got Wayfarers of the South Tigris. You know, this one probably could have been a little bit higher up on my list, but it's just one that I haven't played too often to justify it being higher up. But in this game, basically, you are wayfarers, so you're out searching and finding new land. So on your turn, you can get cards that are, you know, your vistas, your water cards, and then you have your land cards. And on these cards, you've got different dice actions on there. You have your main caravan, which has like the actual symbols, right? So you've got like your camel and your bird or whatever. So you'll roll your dice and then you'll place them on these actions, and that kind of indicates what you do out on your tableau. This game is very sandboxy, and you have to be very deliberate about what you're scoring. Overall, I just think it's a really fun one.
Yeah, so I'll actually jump over to my number 3. which is Wayfarers
There
as
you
well.
go.
I agree with what you said. I think, I like that, well, talking about the worker placement side of things, right? You have your own tableau, and you're building it like typically pretty efficiently. However, the dice block that good efficient spot you built, and so you may have to do something else to remove a dice. You can go there again, or different ways of resetting, or maybe you got like a combo where you go to this spot, this spot, and this spot, and it really pays out. I do like that sandboxiness of that game, and I think it's a good amount of, yes, you go in and you kind of find your own strategy and scoring things, but at the same time, it's very tactical and reacting to which cards are actually coming out to then decide, right? Are a bunch of vistas coming out and I want to try and get them and then take the scoring for vistas, or maybe I'm going to try and just be very broad and, score the sets. There's just so many different ways of scoring the thing. It's a game I absolutely love. You mentioned Euphoria being one of your favorite Stonemaier games. This is definitely one of my favorite Garfield games.
And one thing that I really enjoy about Wayfarers is the way that you can actually manipulate the dice, right? So whenever you're gaining different tiles and you're adding them to that caravan, if you roll something that you were hoping for something else, right? There's a way for you to, oh, this one lets me add this, and then I can add over here. But in reality, this number now does both the camel and this. So you may start off where it feels pretty tight. You can't go to very many spaces, but as the game progresses, it kind of opens up and it lets you go to a lot more places. And I think that's a really good part about this game, is that it just kind of opens up the more that you play it.
Yeah, so since that was my number 3, what about yours?
So my number 3 is actually Guild Academies of Valeria. And this one is one that sort of newer to our collection. So in Guild Academies of Valeria, really you have all these dice at the beginning and you're just kind of drafting them. So the first part of the game is really just kind of this dice drafting mechanic. The worker placement comes into when you're actually educating them, right? So throughout the game, you are collecting classrooms, you're collecting different buildings to add on to your university. And then each of those classrooms has different requirements for your dice, right? So some of them might be you need the blue and the orange dice, and they need to be different pip values, right? So then you can put those dice out there. Once you put them there, you get some type of resource for it. So then at that point, you're trying to graduate them to later fulfill quests or whatever. What I really enjoy about that is also you can manipulate the dice with the magic, right? So you have all that. But you really have to go into the dice drafting looking for where you're going to be placing them later. So it really takes some strategy in there, some really kind of like forethinking about that part. And I think overall they did a really good job on that one.
Yeah, so that was our number 3s. Over to our number 2s. So for my number 2, it's got to be Lorenzo Il Magnifico. Paul, probably no surprise that this ended up on my list.
Surprised it's not a little bit higher.
This pure definition of worker placement using dice, right? And the unique mechanic with it is the dice are completely community, right? So you have 3 colored dice, you roll them, and then there is a orange, a white, and a black, I believe. And everybody has those kind of colored workers, and you use them. So if the orange is a 4, everybody is using their orange at a 4 string. Now there is ways of getting cards and stuff to where maybe your black dice is +2 or whatnot. But overall, that is the base strength of them. And it is a very tight worker placement game. And kind of not necessarily open sandboxy as Wayfarers, but you can kind of go your own routes. You can build a resource engine. You can build a kind of conversion engine, or you could just go kind of a almost trickery, right? Rule breakers, get little points here, or just collect stuff and dump it into points. So all different kind of ways to go. I like the mechanics of you put the workers on one of those 4 actions are associated to towers, and you put it on the tower, and you can actually only use one of your kind of colored workers on that tower. And it's just, I think, a great way of it actually incorporating the dice into worker placement.
Yeah, I think it does the mechanic well, but it's not a game for me, so I have not much more to say. It's a good game for what it is, just not for me.
Yeah,
So.
I know. So what is your number 2?
So for my number 2, I've actually got Scholars of the South Tigris here. And this one, this is one that we were kind of talking about at the beginning. It kind of skirts that worker placement mechanic. Really, the worker placement part of it happens on your board, right? So in this game, you have dice, you've got a bag of dice, you draw them out, you roll them, you've got specific pip values, whatever. So you'll be using these dice to go to different actions on the main board, right? So you can put them either on the travel spot, on the translate spot, on the research track, whatever it may be, and eventually blocking those spaces from using them later. And you have to really kind of decide, do I want to do this first in order to gather these resources so that I can do this later? At some point, you might get your little special card that's like, do I want to put this pre-printed 5 on here to then add on to this? So this game, it's a lot of planning in it in order to get those spots in the timing that you want to do it. So for that's my number 2.
Yeah, it's just a good game. The best thing it does is it's so different in its dice manipulation than really kind of any game I've personally ever played before it. You have so many ways to change your initial roll results, and none of them involve actually re-rolling the dice. And I just think that is a great way of doing it.
And I think that's probably that's a very important mechanism when you have dice, right? Is to be able to manipulate them, because if not, then it's just random. And I don't think any of these games that we've talked about are random, right? It's maybe Creature Comforts because you are hoping for something, but there's ways to manipulate that as well. And this one, like you said, it's just done it in such a creative way that you can have something completely different than what you rolled.
Yeah, so that was our number 2s. Let's get to number 1. Okay, and so carrying on with kind of, I guess, the Garfield trend, my number 1, easily, Circadian's First Light.
Well, I'll stop you right there, because that's my number 1 game as well, Circadian's First Light.
It does not surprise me one bit.
Yeah.
It's Circadian's First Light is the pure definition of dice worker placement.
Yes, I agree.
You roll your dice, you have them in behind the screen, you actually kind of pre-program where you're wanting your dice to go, you reveal, and then you go in turn order, and that is kind of where I guess the chaos can really ensue. You've placed your dice already, planning to go to a garage, go to here, go to there, and you're going in turn order, so you might get off your first one, but somebody else might be taking that second one and finding a way of working around and, okay, I've already put these here, he went there, now where can I go, what can I do, kind of that scramble. It's just done so well.
And a great thing about that is there's such high player interaction without actually like deliberately going in and being like, I am blocking you from this space, right? Because it's done in secret, you might have an idea of, oh, I think Devin is going to want to move his I forget what you call it, the rover, the harvester to here. I might want to go there first, or I think Devin's going to want to fulfill a contract. I might need to go there first. But in reality, you don't know exactly what they're going to do. And so you just kind of hope for the best on there. And I think they did that really well.
Yeah, so as I said, I think this one just, well, we both agree, takes the cake for dice worker placement. And I would honestly say, even amongst Garfield games, this is not
a high one. Yes,
it's high. It's not my actual favorite. I think kind of the other ones mentioned probably fall above it. But when I think of this mechanic, this one
is the game.
It just does it so well. Yeah. So that was it. That was our list of dice worker placement games. Tell us what ones you like. Tell us if you enjoy the ones that we like. Tell us something in the comments. We always appreciate seeing y'all's opinion on it. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe. All those things help us, help our channel grow. We'll see you on the next one.